Hi, Sally Walker here, your hormone and slow age expert, and welcome to Carbohydrate Week. So this is the week I've dedicated to everything you need to know about carbohydrate, and we've already been talking a little bit about that. Carbohydrate is just another word for sugar, which is just another word for glucose. Then today we're going to talk about glucose. So what is it? Well, it is basically the most abundant of all the sugars, so the most abundant monosaccharide. So mono means there's one single molecule. And when we have one single molecule, we don't need to digest it. It's all ready to get into the bloodstream. So glucose is a monosaccharide, and it is the most abundant of all the three monosaccharides, the other ones being fructose and the other one being galactose, and we'll look at those later. Okay, now plants make glucose. Yes, they do. They make it through something called photosynthesis. So this is why when we eat plant foods, fruits, veggies, root veggies, grains, seeds, nuts, all of these are plant foods, that they contain carbohydrate or they contain glucose, because most of them contain purely glucose. Okay, now glucose is not the sweetest of all the sugars, fructose is, but glucose is about 65% as sweet as fructose. So it is still sweet. And this is why when we eat things like bread and things like pasta and things like rice, etc., they all taste a little bit sweet. And this is one of the reasons why we are a little bit addicted to it. We love the taste of, people love bread. They always say that to me. Oh, I just love bread. Yeah, tastes sweet, doesn't it? And it's all the glucose, because there's no fructose in bread, or there shouldn't be. But there's something called high fructose corn syrup. I'll be talking about that a little bit later. And unfortunately, the food industry do put this in baked goods, including bread, so they taste even sweeter than they should do. Right. So glucose, it is the most important energy source for all organisms, okay, plants, animals, etc. Now, all animals can actually produce it, okay, so we can eat it. We're an animal, we can eat it. But we can't necessarily rely on finding food, can we? So we have an internal system where we actually can produce it. And we have a couple of ways of producing it. We can produce it from something called glycogen, which is basically long chains of glucose, which we have in our liver and we have in our muscles. So we can make it from that. We can break down the glycogen in the liver and release the glucose to the bloodstream. The muscles will use glycogen for their own energy production. So that's okay. But if we still don't have enough glucose in our blood, because we like to have some glucose, we'll talk about why in a minute, then we can actually make it from non-carbohydrate structure in our bodies, and these are called proteins. And the little process is called gluconeogenesis. Oh, I just love that word. So it means making glucose from non-carbohydrate products or tissues. And guess which tissues? Yes, you guessed right. It's going to be your muscle tissue, bone tissue, and your skin tissue. Yes, protein. Yes. Not so good. But we do this all the time. We break down glycogen and we break down muscle tissue. We do it all the time because we need to maintain this glucose in our blood, because there are lots of cells which need it, which cannot use fat to make energy. And this is your brain especially, and it's the retina in your eye, and it's in little parts of your kidneys. They need to have glucose because they can't use fat. Every cell can use glucose, and they do, but most cells can also use fat to make energy. But these cells, your brain, your retina, little parts of your kidney, and cancer cells cannot utilize fat. Okay, so cancer cells, glucose, maybe we should be a little bit conscious of how much glucose we're eating, not to feed those cancer cells. So production of glucose, this breakdown of glycogen, or this gluconeogenesis, your body or your liver will be producing about 180 to 220 grams of glucose every single day. Wow. Yeah. So as I said, we can eat it, and we do need to eat some, absolutely. But we will make all the glucose that we need through the day. So we don't need to get very much from the foods that we eat. And I think this is part of the problem, because the eating of the glucose doesn't stop us making it on the inside. And so we end up with too much glucose. We end up with too much blood sugar, blood glucose, and it starts giving all kinds of problems with insulin and fat storing and all that kind of thing. And we talked about that in one of the previous weeks, I believe. Right, so if you want to have a little look at what your blood sugar is doing, so you can get one of these little blood sugar machines, or you can get a continuous blood sugar monitor, which you can have on your arm, for example. And your blood sugar level should be somewhere between 4 and 7 millimoles a litre, or if you're working with milligrams per deciliter, it is 72 to 140, somewhere around there, for the most part. Yay! So glucose, we can make energy from it. We can make little bits of energy from glucose, so this ATP stuff, which is the energy molecule. And we can do this without oxygen. That's why it's so important, because fat needs oxygen to make energy. So we have the possibility to make energy without oxygen by utilizing glucose. But the biggest amount of energy that comes from utilizing glucose does also involve oxygen, and then we produce much more. So just a little bit, but that can be essential, can't it? That'll help you get away from the tiger kind of thing, which is why your body likes to have glucose. But remember, it can make it itself. Right, well, I hope you found that interesting, and you will find the notes further down in the blog about glucose, so you can read it, so you don't have to listen to me again and again. But you can do that too if you like. But yeah, another day I will be looking at one of the other sugars or something else to do with carbohydrates. Happy hormones, happy life.